All right, so Leonardo, the first thing I'm going to say right off the bat is that I think you did a really good job with your colors and blending and things like that, but there's some things that are a little bit off that I'm looking at that I see right off the bat. And the first and foremost thing that I see right off the bat is the perspective on this guy here. So if this is like, it looks like this is your kind of vanishing line here. And so you are basically bringing this off to the vanishing points like so, okay? And I'm going to assume that your vanishing points kind of end up something along the lines of this. And so you've got, if this is your base platform, what you want to do is you want to draw an X in there, and then because your vanishing point is kind of horizontal, just the character itself is leaning, everything else appears straight up and down. So if that's the case, then what you need to do is you need to draw this point coming down like so, and then basically draw kind of like that. And so that is ultimately going to give you your kind of vanishing point here for this pyramid. If the pyramid is leaned, so if the pyramid has a different vanishing point, what I would say is ultimately that you need to change the perspective on the overall kind of proportion of that box so that it changes as well. Because the vanishing point doesn't match, like it just looks awkward if it's supposed to be just like a octagonal, like basically an 8-sided dice. So that's the thing I would tell you to really kind of pay attention to is that right there. The next thing I look at as this is some of the tangents that you've got going on there. And the tangents are ultimately things that are kind of touching each other, and they're kind of disconcerting. And so the first tangent that I see right off the bat is that you've got one kind of going with this. So your magic is going like this, and your tree branch is going like this, and that intersection just gives you this kind of confusing kind of aspect. The next thing I would say is that you want to really watch kind of how you tangent some of these things together. So you can see here that doesn't look quite as proper. And then you've got this branch and this tree going out off at the same as the cape. So it's little things like that I look at that I automatically want to like. It feels uncomfortable when I'm looking at it. So those are the little things that I would tell you to just kind of be aware of. And I suffer from the same thing too. Like I got halfway done and then I realized I got all these tangents, and I have to go back and kind of do a little adjustments here and there. So those are things that you want to really pay attention to. Now, the other thing that I kind of I'm looking at, and I see from a value standpoint, is that if I look at this from a complete, let's just add a black and white threshold here, and so the things that stick out are the characters, and that is good. The value standpoint sticks out from a character standpoint. And the tree stands out, which is good. So the black and white values read. However, the problem I have is that the values around here start getting lost. So I feel like this character starts losing, especially with the background values here, so overly complex. Like so the green and the green match too much together. The eye, I'm being drawn to too many different places because of the value contrast. If you look at here, like this is my darkest value, but then you throw red on it, and it's like I really want to look at that now. This is my brightest value, so I want to look at her hand, and that's good. However, the big thing is again that by looking at the hand, by looking at that aspect, I'm being drawn away from other elements that I think are more important. And I think it's an easy fix, honestly. If we would take And let's add, not an FX, let's add an adjustment layer. And let's just do, I'm a big fan of hue and saturation. So I think your values are good, but let's just kind of shift the hue and saturation a little bit more. And so by doing that, you can automatically see those greens. Now everything's brown, everything's separated, and so you got her as a feeling of growth, and you look at her, so growth, and then it's a slight adjustment, but things tend to, be focused more centric on her. And so it's little things like that I would tell you really want to pay attention to. And you see how she pops out a little bit more from the background now. As before, she kind of blended in with the background and you kind of lost her with all the other detail. Whereas now I'm forcing the background out. I'm forcing her as, more kind of a defined look. And I'm not changing anything else around. I'm just adjusting that background shift. And all I did for this was ultimately kind of change up this. So this here, if I'm going to change this up, I'm going to transform. Actually, I'm going to shift warp this. Actually, no. Let's do it this way. So I would shift this one over like so. And by shifting her over like this, and then even rotating that character like this, so that now feels a little bit more centric to what you're trying to, I think, achieve. And then we can even go through here and just kind of erase some of this up, so that fixes the pivot point there. And you can even then have her floating. I'm just going to kind of block in the darker values, and so you can see here now it's actually that is actually kind of floating, and we can just go through and kind of erase some of these elements here that I think you want to have back in the system. So, and you can still have those elements. We're just adjusting that focus a little bit more. So I'm going to just kind of go through and kind of clean up a little bit more of that aspect. Maybe even go through here. There we go. So we go through here, and so now you can see that by changing up that perspective a little bit, it makes things feel a little bit more kind of unified and adjusted accordingly. So those are the things that I would tell you to kind of work on, and also kind of pick out your anatomy a little bit. It's a little bit off in places. I would, if I'm looking at anatomy, let me just do this here real quick. So if I'm looking for anatomy issues, the neck kind of has dissipated, so you always want to block out that character like so. And even if the character is looking downward like so, and then the rib cage, so the proportions are a little bit off, a little bit kind of uncharacteristically kind of complex here. And so I would, like, this looks okay, but then when you start adding in the extra kind of mass, so the breast would be up a little bit more, and I get you want to extend the torso, but then the shoulder comes up here and kind of blocks that out. So, and then the foreshortening here feels kind of awkward, like this arm is straight out, but it's also smaller a lot compared to this arm. So you might want to, like, what I would tell you to do is bring the hand a little bit closer to the camera, so angle the hand a little bit more so you see more of the foreshortening going in. So here is a foreshortened piece, here is a more of a foreshortened piece, and so just watch that anatomy, and I think that's a little thing that you can kind of do with your photo reference. All right, so I hope that helps.